What's up, kiddos? Trowbro is back with another Drawing with Trowbro, and today we're going to be looking at how to draw Flounder from The Little Mermaid. Now, you think it'd be easier just because there's no hands and feet, but he is a little challenging, so let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so I got my picture of Flounder here on the left, and I've went ahead and traced the simple shapes that make up Flounder's body, and now I'm going to start drawing on the right side those simple shapes that I have broken down Flounder's body into. And I kind of usually start with kind of like marking how tall he is, so I do kind of like a line on the top and the bottom to know exactly how tall I want to make him, because I'm trying to copy the image as best I can to the left. Now, Flounder's body shape kind of reminds me of a light bulb. It's kind of a light bulb on its side, or maybe like a really distorted version of like a pork chop maybe, or maybe a ham. If you're drawing like, one of those old school hams with a little bone sticking out the back. Almost the exact same shape, and maybe that's what sharks see when they see a little fish swimming around. They just see that little ham, like, food, yum yum. So I'm just kind of drawing that, and you'll probably notice that when I drew his fins, and I drew that shape that kind of makes up the fins, I didn't draw it exactly how the fins were. I kind of just drew the shape that makes it up, and I'll go back and I'll find those little shapes inside my negative space, and I'll do that later, but I kind of just drew one big shape that encompasses all those different little shapes. So I'm always trying to break down my image into the biggest shapes that I see. Now, don't forget that I'm drawing very lightly because I know I'm going to have to go back and erase a lot of these lines. These are kind of just to help guide my drawing along as I do it. And you're probably wondering maybe why I put that little plus sign on his face. That's just to make sure that his eyes are the same size. I'm going to make sure my proportions are correct. So that's usually what that is. So that's why I draw lightly, because I know I'm going to have to erase things later on down the road. Alright, so I'm going to start with Flounder's face, and the biggest shape that I see is that nose of his that kind of goes from his eyes, kind of like a G shape, and goes all the way to his cheek. And so I'm drawing that round shape, and what I like to do is I like to use that little cross, that plus, to kind of help guide me. Like, it kind of starts right there and then goes past the light bulb and then comes back around. And so I'm trying to use all those shapes. So like his nose, like, will make that little small shape. Now his nose kind of goes right into his cheek right there, so I'm going to draw that cheek shape. It's kind of like a backwards looking C. Kind of has like kind of a little curve to it. Also, something that's really important to this picture of Flounder is line weight. And I probably don't emphasize line weight enough. But line weight is how like part of the lines are really thin and other parts are really thick. Alright, that's line weight. Alright, it gives emphasis on different things. So like his nose is kind of skinny right at the tip, but then underneath where his mouth is, it gets a little bit thicker. Alright, so it adds a little bit of depth to the drawing, and line weight is super important to drawing cartoons and comics and stuff. So now I'm drawing his mouth, and it goes down, and kind of notice that his chin kind of goes outside of that pork chop shape that we drew earlier. So that's super important. So draw that. And while I'm down here by his mouth, I'm going to go ahead and draw his tongue, which is always kind of like two little hill shapes. It's like the first line is kind of goes in the middle, and then the next one right beside it, kind of hill shapes. Flounder is very innocent, and so he's very round. Usually, protagonists like the heroes are usually a little more round, and then like the bad guys are usually more jagged, a little sharp, like more threatening. Like think Flotsam and Jetsam, those are the two eels in Little Mermaid. Like definitely more angular, as opposed to Flounder, who's nice and round. All right, now I'm gonna go ahead and draw his eyes, and since his eyes are kind of slanted right here, like the left eye is kind of a little bit lower than the right, I'm going to draw a line on the left side just to make sure that I'm keeping my eyes the exact same shape. I don't want one eye to be a little bit bigger than the other one. Sometimes drawings are like that. Like I think, I'm trying to think of the last drawing we did that one of the eyes was a little bit bigger. I think it was Gus from Cinderella. Like one of his eyes was a little bit bigger than the other one. So sometimes you do want that, and it kind of gives like a character a little bit of a craziness, but Flounder's just a fun little character, and so his eyes are about the same shape. And kind of notice that instead of just a regular oval, his eyes kind of look like two C shapes that are like stuck together. So there's like a little bit of an overhang right above. So it kind of like curves up, and then you kind of go from the bottom up to that C shape, and you want that little overhang. And then right above his eyes got a little eye wrinkle. Then I'm going to go ahead and draw his eyes, and his eyes are usually the standard. You got your iris color, the green, and then you got the pupil, which is the black center, and then you have just a little tiny glare. Sometimes what I do, and I didn't do it this time, but sometimes you can just color it all black and then go back with your eraser and just erase a small little circle. Sometimes it's easier to do that than to actually sit there and draw and shade around a little circle, but it's up to you.
All right, and then his eyebrows are just a couple like parentheses looking things, little hills, and just remember that line weight, how they're kind of skinny at the end and they get kind of thicker at the top. Line weight's super important. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and draw Flounder Stripes, and I've counted them. There are 4 stripes, so I want to make sure that I can fit 4 stripes onto this one shape. I kind of drew one big shape that makes up all of his stripes, and I want to make sure that I draw 4. Sometimes, you know, like when you start drawing, you just draw the shapes as you think you see them, so you're just like, oh, he has stripes, so then you draw, and then you realize that, oh, I drew three stripes instead of 4. So it's always really important to count and make sure that you give enough space to draw the exact amount of stripes that you see and not just draw stripes randomly. All right, and I'm going to try to copy these stripe shapes the best I can. Like the 2 bigger ones are kind of skinnier right there at the end, and then the last 2 are kind of just like really long U shapes. All right, now for his top fin, it kind of goes down to a little widow's peak, which is the little point of your hair, but for a flounder, it's not his hair, it's really his fin. So I like how the Disney artist that designed Flounder was creative and makes his fin look kind of like hair, so it has kind of like some spikes right there in the front. And so I've counted them, there's 3. The first one's kind of like a really skinny, kind of like a parenthesis, but then the second one looks kind of like a knife shape, and then the third one's more like a katana shape. Notice that each one of those little hairs of his fin in the front is a little different, so make sure you try to draw it just like you see it. And then he's got 2 little stripes on his fin, like one right above the first stripe on his body, and then another littler one on the second stripe of his body. All right, now let's go ahead and finish his tail fin and then his little arm fins. And I'm going to cut kind of those line shapes out of the back, kind of follow and see that little white shape that is created between his fin and then that red bulb line that I drew. That little shape I want to try to make sure that I copy on his tail fin. And then he's got 2 little stripes that kind of are curved, all right? And then I'm going to draw that the best way I see it. That's all I can do. I'll clean it up a little bit as soon as I'm done, and I think it'll look a lot better. I am really kind of all over the place with this drawing right now. It's a little messy, but when I clean it up, I think it'll look pretty good. All right, now the same thing with his little hand fins, but I'm going to kind of start with the middle fin because it's the biggest one, and then I'm going to kind of draw the side parts of the fin around the bigger one, because I always feel like it's easier to draw the bigger parts and then the smaller parts later. Kind of helps me get the scale right, you know, make sure my proportions are right. So I'm just trying to draw this curve. It goes down and up and then over. And it's kind of like each one of the little shapes of his fin are very similar. They're kind of really skinny, and then they get kind of bigger and wider at the end. All right, I think I got all the major parts of Flounder, his drawing, done. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of speed this up right now, and I'm going to go around and darken all the lines that I want to keep. That's why it's really important that you're drawing lightly. So this part right here, you could do it with a Sharpie or a black colored pencil. It really depends on you know, how you're going to color this, or if you want to color it. For mine, it's just going to be a black and white drawing. So I'm just going to go around and darken all the lines that I want to keep. All right, now my favorite part where I get to clean up my drawings. I've got my eraser. I'm going to go around. I'm also going to speed this up. Now, I know it looks like I'm drawing this picture really fast, but I speed up a lot of the parts. So, like, probably in reality, it took me about 30 minutes to draw Flounder. All right, so don't be like, oh, man, I'm so slow at drawing. No, it just takes a lot of time to make a really good drawing. All right, so don't be hard on yourself. Make sure you're taking your time, making sure you're making it look as good as you can, because usually when you rush, that's usually when you make mistakes. And then after my Flounder's all cleaned up, I think it looks pretty good. It looks a lot like the picture on the right. I think as close as I'm going to get it. You know, there's a couple little things I could change and tweak, but I think it's good enough. It looks just like Flounder.
Well, kiddos, I hope you had fun drawing Flounder. Make sure you keep practicing it, and if you want me to showcase the drawing that you made of Flounder, have your parents email me right here, my email address, and next video I will showcase the awesome artwork that you guys are making. See you next time.